Let me say something that sounds obvious, but almost no one actually thinks through to the end. Being poor isn't just about earning less money, it's about paying more for the exact same life. Same car, same house, same bills, same set of problems on a Tuesday afternoon. The difference isn't what you buy, it's when the cost shows up and whether you have anything left to absorb it. The price tag on something is not the total cost of owning it. The sticker price is the entry fee. What happens after depends almost entirely on whether you came in with margin. If you did, the transaction ends cleanly. If you didn't, it opens a chain reaction that costs more, takes longer, and drains more energy than the original purchase was ever worth. I'm not saying this to make you feel bad. I'm saying it because the conversation most people have about money is almost entirely about habits and discipline, as if the problem is that you keep buying coffee or that you need to wake up earlier and grind harder. Maybe some of that is true, but none of it explains why two people who buy the exact same thing at the exact same price end up paying radically different amounts for the same outcome. Money doesn't disappear. You spend it. And when you don't have margin, the system doesn't just charge you for the thing you bought. It charges you for not being prepared. And that second bill is usually bigger than the first. That's what we're talking about today. Here's the part that almost never gets explained properly, and when it does, it usually gets explained condescendingly, which defeats the purpose. Being poor doesn't just change your bank account. It changes how your brain operates, not in a vague, inspirational way. Structurally, the condition of not having enough money creates a specific cognitive environment that distorts how you process decisions, not because you're less intelligent, not because you're careless, but because your mental resources are being consumed by something more immediate. When money is constantly short, your attention narrows. You stop thinking about next month. You stop comparing rates on the loan you're about to take out. You stop planning for the car insurance renewal, not because you forgot, and not because you don't care, but because your brain is currently managing a different problem. The rent conversation, the overdue bill, the question of whether the check will clear before the automatic payment runs. These aren't abstract concerns. They occupy real mental space in real time. And when they're filling that space, something else has to give. Psychologists call this the scarcity mindset. And the key thing to understand is that it's not a personality trait. It's a response to a situation. It's what happens when your cognitive bandwidth is consistently consumed by short-term pressure. Your brain has correctly identified a threat, so it prioritizes that threat over everything else, including the long-term planning that would reduce future threats. The problem is that survival mode thinking, which is exactly right in the short term, makes you worse at the kinds of decisions that would improve your position over time. You become reactive. You choose the option that solves today's problem over the option that costs less over the next 3 years. Not because you can't see the difference, but because the 3-year horizon isn't available to you. You don't have the margin to wait. This is what I mean when I say poverty is structural and psychological, and the two things feed each other. The structure creates the cognitive condition. The cognitive condition makes the structure harder to escape. You're not failing to think clearly because you're undisciplined. You're failing to think clearly because your thinking is being taxed by an environment that charges interest on every mistake. I'm not judging you, I'm judging the decision environment. This is an observation. There's serious research behind it. In the book Scarcity, written by behavioral economist Sendhil Mullainathan and cognitive psychologist Eldar Shafir, the authors found that people under financial stress perform measurably worse on standard cognitive tasks by an amount equivalent in rough terms to a drop of around 13 IQ points. To be clear, this isn't permanent. And it isn't about intelligence. It's about available bandwidth at any given moment. When you're actively managing financial scarcity, juggling payments, running scenarios in your head, absorbing the low-level stress of not having a buffer, your ability to plan, compare options, and resist short-term temptation is reduced in roughly the same way it would be after a night without sleep. Now layer that onto the fact that financial decisions tend to be among the most consequential decisions a person makes in any given week. When your car breaks down, that's when you're most cognitively depleted. When the bill is due and you're weighing your options, that's when the mental bandwidth for long-term consequence is least available. The decisions that matter most tend to happen exactly when you're least equipped to make them well. And the system prices this accordingly: higher interest rates for people with lower credit scores, higher insurance premiums for people in more fragile positions. The people carrying the most cognitive stress are also paying the most for financial services. That's not coincidence. It's structure. One data point, that's enough. Everything else in this video is built on understanding what it means. Think about this. Two people buy the same used car, same model, same year, same price, same dealership. Then 8 months later, the alternator fails. For the person with margin, $3,000 or $4,000 in savings they don't touch. This is an inconvenience. They take the car in, pay the bill, drive home. $600 or $700, painful but contained. The story ends there. For the person without margin, the same mechanical failure opens a completely different chapter. No cash available, the repair goes on a credit card, maybe the only card with room left on it. Now it's not a $600 problem. It's a $600 problem at 22% interest, paid in minimums over 12 months. Real cost closer to $800. And while those minimum payments are running, the buffer that didn't exist before is now negative. The next unexpected expense, a doctor visit, a parking ticket, an overdue registration, doesn't get absorbed cleanly. It gets layered on top of existing debt. And here's the subtle part. The stress of carrying that debt starts affecting other decisions. You delay another repair because you can't face another bill right now. That delay turns a $200 fix into a $1,200 fix 3 months later. You avoid a doctor's appointment because you already owe money and can't process knowing how much more you're about to owe. Small problems compound. Each deferred decision adds to the pile. The person with margin experiences none of this. Not because they're more virtuous, not because they're smarter, but because they had the liquidity to contain the problem before it spread. The repair was absorbed, the chain reaction never started. Timing and liquidity. Most people are focused on the price of the thing. The real game is happening somewhere else. The reality is simple. Fragility is expensive. Most people, not all, but most, use money reactively. They earn it, spend it on what they need and some of what they want, and handle problems when those problems arrive. That's not a character flaw, that's the default setting. It's what happens when the daily cost of living is already consuming most of what you earn before there's anything left to position strategically. The financial system knows this about most people, and it has built its products accordingly. Student loans exist in their current form partly because 18-year-olds can't accurately model 30-year liabilities. Buy now, pay later services are specifically designed to reduce friction at the point of purchase, exactly when a person is least likely to be doing careful long-term math. Credit card minimum payments are set at levels that maximize interest collected over time, not levels that help you get out of debt efficiently. Subscription services auto-renew because most people don't track them carefully enough to cancel on time. All of these products followed the same logic. I'm not making a conspiratorial argument, I'm describing incentives. If you have margin, if you pay your credit card in full, if you have an emergency fund, if you can walk away from any purchase without urgency, You are, from the financial industry's perspective, a low-value customer. The financial system, in its most profitable form, depends on people without a buffer. Not because those people are foolish, but because the products are engineered to be most expensive for exactly that situation. The system doesn't punish you for spending money. It punishes you for being fragile while you spend it. Fragility is expensive. And the moment you're most stressed, most cognitively depleted, most pressed for time is precisely when the most expensive financial products are pointed at you. People who understand money are not a separate species. They're not more disciplined or more virtuous. What they have is a different model of what money is for. That model changes every decision they make, not through effort, but through instinct shaped by a different mental framework. Most people think of money as a resource for purchasing things. You earn it, buy what you need, and try to have some left. That's not wrong, but it's incomplete. People who understand money think of it more importantly as protection, a buffer between themselves and a bad option. The goal isn't to spend less, it's to never be in a position where you have no choice. That distinction changes how you optimize. Like if you're maximizing consumption, you look for the cheapest option. If you're minimizing exposure to bad options, you optimize differently. You pay more for reliability. You maintain things before they break, because scheduled repairs are almost always cheaper than emergency ones. You keep cash you don't intend to spend because that cash isn't idle. It's your exit from negotiations that don't go your way. In The Upside of Inequality, economist Edward Conard explains that capital functions less as spending power and more as a way to absorb risk and access opportunity. People with capital don't just have more to spend, they can wait, decline bad deals, take risks others can't afford because they can survive being wrong. That patience and optionality are valuable, which is why the system rewards them. This isn't a moral argument, it's mechanics. Systems reward those who can wait, absorb shocks, and transact from strength rather than necessity. Without margin, you transact from weakness, and weak positions are expensive. When someone without margin buys a car, they often accept the first financing offer because they need the car now. Someone with margin can walk away, get multiple quotes, and bring their own financing. The information is identical, the car is identical, margin creates leverage. This isn't exciting, that's why it works. If your takeaway from this video is, I need to save more, you've got part of the message, but only part. Saving is real. The emergency fund is real. Cutting your burn rate, tracking where money goes, building a buffer, all of it genuinely helps. Do the boring stuff, it works. Saving alone has a ceiling, and that ceiling is lower than people want to admit. If you earn $55,000 a year and your fixed expenses consume $45,000 of it, saving your way to financial stability is an extremely slow process. Cutting lattes doesn't change the math in any meaningful way. The coffee is not the problem. The gap between income and cost is the problem. And beyond a certain point, you can't cut your way to wider margin. You have to earn your way there. This isn't an argument against frugality. It's an argument for proportion. Most personal finance advice is weighted heavily toward spending reduction and lightly toward income expansion. The real math often runs the other direction. One meaningful improvement in income, a marketable skill, a better role, a side income that actually compounds can change your position faster than years of careful cutting. But income alone isn't enough either. Plenty of people earn genuinely good money and still live in fragility because they never learned how the system works and they spend accordingly. The people who actually change their position over time, increase income, and structure spending deliberately, they understand the difference between debt that destroys and debt that works. They invest early and imperfectly rather than waiting until they feel ready. They build systems that reduce how often they have to make financial decisions from scratch. None of it is glamorous. The compounding is invisible for a long time, and then one day It isn't. Let me slow this down for a second. Minimalism is popular enough in personal finance circles that it deserves a direct answer, not dismissal, but clarity about what it solves and what it does not. Financially, it helps. It lowers your monthly burn rate, extending the runway before a crisis hits. It reduces decision fatigue around consumption and weakens status-based spending, a major driver of financial fragility. But minimalism without financial literacy is just disciplined fragility. You lower the cost of your life without changing its structure. You are still reactive to emergencies and one bad month away from the same chain reactions. You buy time, which matters, but you do not build what truly protects you: margin. The goal is not to need less, it is to have enough margin so consumption becomes a real choice, not a source of anxiety. Some people gain security and then become minimalists because they simply want less. That is fine. But minimalism comes after security, not before it. Get the margin first, then decide what kind of life to build with it. There's a version of this conversation that ends with everyone feeling validated and nothing changing. The system is unfair. The deck is stacked. You're not responsible for your situation. That's not what I'm doing here. The structure is real. The cognitive effects of scarcity are real. The way financial products are engineered to extract maximum value from people with minimum margin is real. All of that is true and worth understanding. But understanding the structure is not a reason to stop acting. It's a reason to act differently. Fragility is expensive. This whole video has been about what it costs to be fragile, the premium you pay for not having margin. But there's a related question that's more interesting and a little more uncomfortable. What does it look like when someone uses money not to buy things, but to buy advantage? Not through anything dishonest, not through some financial product you haven't heard of, just through understanding that the system rewards specific behaviors, timing, patience, positioning, and using that structure deliberately instead of stumbling through it. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. Click on the screen to see what to do in the first 24 hours after your paycheck hits. Do the boring stuff. It works.